Some secrets don't die with the people who keep them. They wait, patient as tombstones, until the right moment to resurrect themselves and shatter everything you thought you knew about the ones you loved. Jonathan Pierce had built an empire from concrete and ambition, his name carved into Manhattan's skyline like a monument to what happens when a man chooses towers over family. At 53, he'd learned the cruel arithmetic of success. Every million earned cost him something irreplaceable. His daughter's laughter, her graduation, the chance to tell her he was proud before the Hudson River swallowed her whole on a rain-slicked October night 10 years ago. Now, every March 2nd, Jonathan made his pilgrimage. Not to his boardroom or his penthouse overlooking Central Park, but to Evergreen Cemetery in Brooklyn, where Lily Pierce rested beneath a modest headstone she would have chosen herself. He always came alone, always brought a single white lily, and always left before anyone could see the cracks in his carefully maintained facade. This morning, spring had arrived early, painting the cemetery in soft gold light that made the ancient oaks look almost holy. Jonathan drove himself across the Brooklyn Bridge, his hands steady on the wheel of his Mercedes, his driver given the day off. This ritual belonged to him alone, or so he thought. The gravel path crunched beneath his Italian leather shoes as he climbed the familiar hill. He'd memorized this route the way other men memorize stock tickers. The bend past the Marble Angel, the oak with the split trunk, the small bench where he and Lily used to sit when she still wanted her father's company. Back when she was 7 and thought he hung the moon, before she learned he was too busy hanging his name on buildings instead. He rounded the final turn and stopped dead. Someone was at Lily's grave. 2 someones. A man in a faded work jacket knelt on the damp grass, his shoulders heaving with the kind of sobs that come from somewhere deep and broken. Beside him, a little girl, maybe 8 years old, carefully arranged smooth river stones along the edge of the headstone, her small hands working with the focused concentration of a child building something important. She wore scuffed sneakers and a purple hoodie that had seen better days, and when she placed a bright pink stone atop her careful pile, she giggled, a sound so pure and unexpected it felt like birdsong in a graveyard. Then the girl looked up, and Jonathan's world tilted sideways. Those eyes, Lily's eyes, the same storm grey that could shift from fury to joy in a heartbeat, the same high cheekbones, the same stubborn tilt to her chin when she was concentrating. It was like looking through a window into the past, except the past had somehow stepped into the present, wearing a stranger's face. The white lily slipped from Jonathan's fingers and fell to the grass, forgotten. His voice came out rough, unfamiliar even to himself. "Excuse me. This is my daughter's grave. Who are you?" The man flinched as if Jonathan's words had struck him physically. He scrambled to his feet, wiping his face with the back of his hand, leaving dirt streaks across his cheeks. Up close, Jonathan could see the deep lines around his eyes, the calluses on his palms, the kind of weariness that comes from too many double shifts and not enough sleep. "I'm Mateo Rivera," the man said, his voice hoarse from crying. He glanced down at the little girl who had stopped arranging stones and was now watching this exchange with the frank curiosity of a child discovering adults behaving strangely. "This is Anna. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to intrude. We come here. I come here because—" His voice fractured. "Because my sister's stone is just over that hill. But Lily, your daughter, she meant everything to someone I loved." The words hung in the air between them like smoke, visible but impossible to grasp. "I don't understand," Jonathan said, though something in his chest was already tightening, already knowing that whatever came next, would unmake him. My daughter didn't. I would have known if she... But even as he said it, the lie was obvious. He wouldn't have known. He'd been in Tokyo when she died, in Dubai when she graduated, in London when she needed him most. He'd chosen every city on earth, except the one where his daughter was building a life he knew nothing about. Mateo reached into his jacket, slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal, and pulled out an envelope. It was worn soft with handling, the edges frayed. Jonathan's name was written across it in handwriting he recognized instantly, Lily's looping script, the way she always made her J too fancy, trying to impress him even in rebellion. She wrote this, Mateo said quietly, years ago. She never sent it because she was afraid of how you'd react. She was going to tell you everything when the time was right. But then... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. They both knew how that sentence ended, in a car, in the rain, in the river. Jonathan's hands shook as he took the envelope. The paper felt impossibly light, like it might disintegrate if he gripped it too hard. "Tell me what?" he whispered. Mateo looked at the little girl, Anna, who had gone back to her stones, building her small monument with the patience of someone who'd done this many times before. When Mateo spoke again, his words were careful, measured, like he was diffusing a bomb. Lily fell in love with a carpenter named Noah, my brother-in-law. They had a life in Williamsburg. Small, beautiful, full of paint and music and dreams about a house by a lake somewhere upstate. They were happy, Mr. Pierce. Really happy. And they had... He swallowed hard. They were going to have a baby. Anna. The world lurched. Jonathan looked at the little girl with new eyes. No, the same eyes, Lily's eyes, and saw not just resemblance, but continuation. His daughter hadn't ended in the Hudson River. Part of her had survived, had grown, was kneeling in front of him right now, stacking pink stones and humming a melody he didn't recognize. "That's impossible," he breathed, but his voice carried no conviction. "I would have been notified. Child services, the hospital, someone would have..." "Noah raised her," Mateo said gently. "After Lily died, he..." His voice cracked again. "He did his best. But 3 years ago, there was an accident at a construction site in Queens. He didn't make it. I'm Anna's legal guardian now. I work maintenance at your building in Midtown, actually. The Pierce Tower. Of course. The universe had that kind of bitter poetry. And you never told me?" Jonathan's voice rose despite himself. "You work in my building. You knew who I was, and you never..." "She asked us not to." Mateo's words were simple, devastating. "Lily made Noah promise. She said you'd try to take over, that you'd want to control everything like you always did, that you'd try to fix things with money instead of..." He stopped himself. "Instead of what?" Jonathan demanded. "Instead of just being there." The words landed like a physical blow. Jonathan staggered back a step, and suddenly the little girl was right there, tugging on his coat sleeve with small, fearless fingers. "Are you sad?" Anna asked, tilting her head up to look at him. Her voice was clear, unburdened by the weight the adults were carrying. "Mateo says it's okay to be sad here. That's what this place is for." Jonathan looked down at his granddaughter. His granddaughter. The words still felt impossible, and felt something crack open in his chest that had been sealed shut for a decade. "Yes," he managed. "I'm very sad, and I'm very sorry." Anna considered this with the gravity of a child who'd learned early that apologies mattered. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a smooth white stone, pressing it into Jonathan's palm. "You can put this one on the pile," she said. "Mama Lily likes white ones best. That's what Mateo says." Jonathan closed his fingers around the stone, warm from Anna's pocket, solid, real, and felt 10 years of careful control dissolve into something he had no name for. When he finally opened the envelope, his hands were still shaking. Dear Dad, I've started this letter 17 times, and I still don't know how to begin. Maybe there's no right way to tell your father you've been living a completely different life than the one he imagined for you. Maybe honesty is supposed to hurt this much. I'm pregnant. Jonathan had to stop reading. He was sitting in his parked Mercedes outside the cemetery gates, the letter spread across his steering wheel, Mateo's phone number tucked in his pocket. He'd promised to call. He'd promised not to disappear. But first, he needed to finish reading his dead daughter's words. I know what you're thinking. This ruins everything. The gallery opening you were planning, the introduction to the Vanderbilt family, the proper trajectory you'd mapped out for my life like I was one of your development projects. But Dad, I'm not a property investment. I'm your daughter. And I've been trying to tell you for years that your plans aren't my dreams. His name is Noah Reed. He builds things with his hands, actual, beautiful things, custom furniture, restoration work, pieces that will outlive us both. We met at a coffee shop in Williamsburg where I was painting a mural. He asked if I needed help reaching the top corner, and I told him I'd been managing just fine without scaffolding or a safety net. Thanks. He laughed and bought me a coffee instead. That was 2 years ago. We've been living in a loft on Bedford Avenue. It's small, you'd hate it, but the light comes through the east windows every morning like liquid gold. And Noah built me a studio space in the corner where I can paint. I've never been happier. The baby is due in December. We're calling her Anna, after Noah's grandmother. We're going to teach her to build things and paint things and be brave enough to choose her own life, even if it disappoints people, especially if it disappoints people. I wanted to tell you in person, but every time I planned to visit, you were in Shanghai or Dubai or closing some deal that couldn't wait. And then I realized I was afraid. Not of you exactly, but of what you represent. That voice in my head that says I'm never enough unless I'm successful in the ways you define success. I need you to know that I'm successful, Dad. I'm loved. I'm creating art that matters to me. I'm about to become a mother. These things might not look like winning to you, but they feel like winning to me. By the time you read this, Anna will be here. I hope you'll want to meet her. I hope you'll see her as more than another Pierce who failed to live up to the family name. I hope you'll teach her the good things you taught me, about persistence and integrity and building things that last, without the parts about sacrificing everything else for ambition. I hope you'll be her grandfather, not her benefactor, just her grandfather. I'm going to call you next week, I promise. I'm ready now. I love you. I've always loved you, even when I hated what you chose instead of us. Lily. The letter was dated October 7th. Lily died October 14th. 7 days. She'd been 7 days away from calling him when the car skidded on rain-slicked asphalt and plunged into the river. Jonathan sat in his car for 2 hours, reading and rereading those words until he'd memorized them. Then he made a phone call. Marcus & Associates Investigation Services. This is Jonathan Pierce. I need a complete background verification. Discreet, thorough, and by tomorrow morning. I'm sending you details now. He spent the rest of the day in his penthouse office, pacing between his windows and his desk, while his investigator worked. The view of Manhattan that usually steadied him felt like mockery now. All those towers with his name on them, monuments to everything his daughter had been trying to escape. The report arrived at 6 a.m. the next morning. Jonathan read it standing at his kitchen counter, black coffee going cold in his hand. Subject: Mateo Rivera, age 34. Employment: Maintenance Supervisor, Pierce Tower, Midtown. Duration: 7 years. Performance reviews: excellent. No criminal record. Financial status: modest but stable. Current residence: 2-bedroom apartment, Sunset Park, Brooklyn. Rent: $1,800 month, legal guardian of Ana Sofia Rivera Reed, age 8 since 2022. Subject: Noah Reed, deceased 2022. Carpenter, specialized in restoration work. Known associates, multiple art collectives in Williamsburg and Bushwick. Tax records show modest but consistent income. Marriage license: Noah Reed and Lily Pierce. Brooklyn City Clerk's Office, June 2014. No family notification listed. Subject: Ana Sofia Rivera Reed, age 8. Birth certificate: Brooklyn Hospital, December 18, 2014. Mother: Lily Pierce. Father: Noah Reed. Current school: PS 312, Sunset Park. Academic performance: above average. Attendance: excellent. Medical records: standard childhood immunizations. No significant health issues. Photographic evidence attached. Images recovered from Noah Reed's personal effects show subject Lily Pierce in various stages of pregnancy, painting murals, laughing in a paint-stained apartment. Multiple photos of infant matching description of Ana Sofia Rivera Reed. Jonathan clicked through the photos with trembling hands. There was Lily, belly round, under an oversized flannel shirt, painting a mural of wildflowers across a coffee shop wall. There was Lily, holding a newborn. Ana, unmistakably Ana, with an expression of fierce, exhausted joy. There was Noah, young and dark-haired and beaming as he held his daughter up to a sunny window. There was a life, a whole life, and Jonathan had missed every single moment of it. He called Mateo at 7 a.m., knowing it was early, not caring. "Mr. Pierce?" Mateo sounded wary, half awake. "I need to see her again," Jonathan said. His voice was raw from crying, from not sleeping, from carrying 10 years of grief that had just transformed into something even heavier. "You and Ana. Not at the cemetery. Somewhere normal. Where we can talk." There was a long pause. In the background, Jonathan could hear morning sounds. A kettle whistling, a child's voice asking a question, the small domestic symphony of a life being lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Sunset Park. "Ana's pace," Mateo said finally. "Everything happens at Ana's pace. That's the only rule." "Agreed," Jonathan said immediately. "Whatever she needs, whatever you both need." Another pause and then, "Prospect Park, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. There's a playground near the 9th Street entrance. Ana likes the swings there." "I'll be there," Jonathan promised. "Mr. Pierce?" Mateo's voice was softer now, careful. "She doesn't know who you are yet. I haven't told her. I wanted to make sure you were sure." "I'm sure," Jonathan said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in his carefully calculated life. Jonathan arrived at Prospect Park 45 minutes early, which was ridiculous. He'd spent the previous day in a state of paralyzed anxiety he hadn't experienced since his first major property bid 30 years ago, except that had been about money, and this was about something he had no framework for understanding. He'd changed clothes 4 times that morning. His assistant had called twice about urgent matters. He'd ignored both calls. The urgent matters could wait. His granddaughter could not. The playground was busy with Saturday morning chaos, kids shrieking, parents negotiating. The smell of hot dogs from a nearby cart mixing with the green scent of grass and trees. Jonathan found an empty bench with a clear view of the swing set and sat down, feeling absurdly conspicuous in his casual clothes. He'd tried for normal, jeans, a simple sweater, but normal on Jonathan Pierce still looked like someone trying very hard to appear approachable. At 10:03 he spotted them. Mateo walked with his hand protectively on Ana's shoulder, scanning the playground with the wariness of someone used to watching out for danger. Ana skipped beside him in light-up sneakers and a yellow jacket that was slightly too big, probably a hand-me-down. When she saw the swings, her whole face brightened. Jonathan stood. His palms were sweating, ridiculous. "Mr. Pierce," Mateo said, formal and careful. Then, to Anna. "Remember the man we met at the cemetery? This is Mr. Jonathan. He knew Mama Lily a long time ago." Anna looked up at him with those devastating, familiar eyes, and Jonathan felt his carefully prepared opening speech dissolve into nothing. "Hi," she said simply. "Hi," Jonathan managed. Your uncle said you like the swings." "I like going really high," Anna announced. "Mateo gets scared when I jump off, but I always land." "She always lands on her face," Mateo corrected, but his voice was warm. "Why don't you show Mr. Jonathan how high you can go? I'll be right here." Anna needed no further invitation. She raced to an empty swing and climbed on, kicking her legs to build momentum. Jonathan followed at a slower pace, feeling like he was walking toward something enormous and fragile that might shatter if he moved wrong. "Can you push?" Anna called back to him. Yes, I can push." He'd forgotten how to push a swing. When had he last done this? With Lily, maybe? Decades ago? His hand settled carefully on Anna's back, and he pushed, too gently at first, then finding the rhythm as she kicked and laughed. "Higher!" she demanded, and Jonathan pushed higher, watching his granddaughter arc toward the sky, her laughter cutting through all the years of silence. They stayed at the playground for 2 hours. Jonathan pushed Anna on the swings until his arms ached. He helped her navigate the monkey bars, spotting her carefully as she moved from rung to rung with fearless determination. When she got thirsty, they walked to a vendor cart, and Jonathan bought hot chocolate for all 3 of them. Anna's served in a paper cup she gripped with both hands like treasure. They found a bench in a sunny spot. Anna sat between them, swinging her legs and sipping her chocolate, leaving a foam mustache across her upper lip. "Mama Lily liked hot chocolate," she said suddenly matter-of-factly. "Mateo told me. He said she liked marshmallows, but only the small ones because the big ones were too sweet." "That's right," Jonathan said, his voice catching. "She used to say the big marshmallows were trying too hard." Anna giggled. "That's silly. How can marshmallows try?" "Your mama thought a lot of things tried too hard," Jonathan said. And then, because honesty seemed like the only currency worth trading in this moment, "including me." Anna looked at him with the solemn assessment of a child who'd learned to read adults carefully. "You're sad about Mama Lily," she said. Not a question. A statement. "Yes," Jonathan admitted, "very sad. Because I wasn't there when I should have been. And now I can't fix it." "Mateo says you can't fix everything," Anna said, wisdom beyond her years delivered in a child's clear voice. "He says sometimes you just have to sit with sad and let it be sad." "Mateo's very smart," Jonathan said, glancing at the younger man who was looking determinedly at the trees, his jaw tight. They sat in silence for a while, watching other families play, the sun warm on their faces. Then Anna shifted closer to Jonathan, close enough that her small shoulder pressed against his arm. "Are you my grandpa?" she asked quietly. "Mateo said maybe you are, but he said I should ask you myself." Jonathan's throat closed completely. He looked at Mateo, who gave him the smallest nod, permission, or maybe just acknowledgement that this moment had arrived, whether they were ready or not. "Yes," Jonathan said, the word cracking apart. "I'm your grandpa, if you'd like me to be." Anna considered this seriously, her small brow furrowed in thought. Finally she held out her pinky finger, the universal contract of childhood. "Okay," she said, "but you have to promise to come back. People always say they'll come back, but sometimes they don't." Jonathan linked his pinky with hers, his large hand dwarfing her tiny one, and made the most important promise of his life. "I promise, Anna, I will always come back." She smiled then, Lily's smile, bright and sudden and absolutely trustworthy, and Jonathan felt something he hadn't felt in 10 years, hope. The following Tuesday, Jonathan showed up at Anna's school. Not inside. He wasn't quite that intrusive, but across the street from PS 312 in Sunset Park, watching the afternoon dismissal like some kind of well-dressed stalker. When Anna emerged with her backpack bouncing, Mateo at her side, Jonathan crossed the street with his heart hammering stupidly. "Mr. Pierce," Mateo said, surprised but not displeased. "Is everything okay?" "I was nearby," Jonathan lied, having driven 40 minutes from Midtown. "I thought maybe we could get ice cream." Anna's face lit up. "Can we, Mateo? Please?" They walked 3 blocks to a small ice cream shop, where Anna deliberated for 10 minutes before choosing mint chocolate chip. Jonathan paid and tried not to make it feel like a transaction, like he was buying his way into her affection. They sat at a wobbly outdoor table, and Anna told him about her art class, about how she was drawing a series of animals wearing fancy clothes, about how her teacher said she had a good eye for color. "Like Mama Lily," she said casually, licking green ice cream from her spoon. "Mateo says she was a really good painter." "She was extraordinary," Jonathan said. "She could see colors other people missed. She'd look at a regular wall and see 50 different shades of white." "I can do that too," Anna said excitedly. "Sometimes, when I really look." The visits became routine. Not every day. Mateo had quietly but firmly established boundaries, and Jonathan respected them, but twice a week, sometimes 3. He learned Anna's schedule: school until 3 p.m., art class on Wednesdays, library story time on Saturdays. He started showing up with small, careful gifts. A set of professional colored pencils after she mentioned hers kept breaking. A book about famous women artists after he heard her say she wanted to be a painter, like Mama Lily. The apartment in Sunset Park was modest but clean, filled with the comfortable clutter of a life being actively lived. The first time Mateo invited him inside, Jonathan had to suppress every instinct to mentally calculate renovation costs and upgrades. The radiator clanked, the windows were old, the kitchen was tiny, but Anna's drawings covered the refrigerator like a gallery wall, and there were plants on every windowsill. And it was a home. "I can help," Jonathan said one evening, the words escaping before he could stop them. They were eating spaghetti at the small kitchen table. Well, Anna and Mateo were eating. Jonathan was mostly pushing food around his plate, hyper-aware of how his presence changed the dynamic of their space. "Help with what?" Mateo asked carefully. "The apartment. The radiator's failing. The windows need replacing. I could—" "No." Mateo's voice was gentle, but absolutely firm. "Thank you, but no. I'm not trying to—" "I know what you're trying to do," Mateo said, "and I appreciate it. But Anna and we're doing fine. We don't need rescuing." The words stung, probably because they were true. Jonathan had been approaching this like a problem to solve, like one of his development projects where the solution was always more resources, better infrastructure, strategic investment. "I'm sorry," Jonathan said. "I don't know how to do this. How to just be useful without taking over." Mateo finished, but his tone wasn't cruel. "Yeah, I noticed." Anna looked between them. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth, sensing tension she couldn't quite name. "Grandpa Jonathan wants to help because he loves us," she said simply, devastating in her childish clarity. "Right, Grandpa?" It was the first time she'd called him that without prompting. Jonathan felt the word land in his chest like a small, perfect stone. "Right," he managed. I do. Then you can help by reading me a story before bed, Anna declared, solving the problem with the effortless authority of an 8-year-old. The one about the girl who builds a flying machine. Mateo does the voices wrong. So, Jonathan read. He sat on the edge of Anna's small bed in her small room with its glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, and he read about a girl who built impossible things and made them fly. Anna corrected his pronunciation and told him which voices needed to be higher and which needed to be gruff, and by the end, she was yawning. "Will you come back Thursday?" she asked sleepily. "It's art class day. You could see my project." "I'll be there," Jonathan promised. And this time, keeping the promise felt less like obligation and more like privilege. He left the apartment and walked the 6 blocks to where his driver waited with the Mercedes, and for the first time in years, Jonathan didn't feel the familiar pull to check his phone, to return to work, to fill the silence with productivity. He just walked through Sunset Park in the spring evening and thought about his granddaughter's voice asking him to come back, asking him to stay. Telling Ethan was harder than facing Mateo had been, harder than reading Lily's letter, harder than anything Jonathan had done in 10 years of carefully managed grief. He called his son on a Wednesday evening and asked him to lunch. Not at one of their usual midtown power restaurants, but at a small cafe in Chelsea where they could talk without an audience of hedge fund managers and real estate moguls watching the Pierce family drama. Ethan arrived exactly on time, dressed in the casual uniform of his generation's tech elite, expensive jeans, a button-down minimalist glasses that probably cost more than most people's rent. At 31, he'd built his own success in venture capital, carefully separate from anything bearing his father's name. They saw each other maybe 4 times a year, always brief, always professionally cordial, always hollow. "Dad," Ethan said, sitting down across from him. "This is unusual. Everything okay? Are you sick?" "No," Jonathan said. "I'm not sick. But I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen all the way through before you react." He watched Ethan's expression shift from puzzled to guarded. His son had learned early to protect himself against Jonathan's announcements, which usually involved expectations or disappointments or criticisms dressed up as concern. "Lily had a child," Jonathan said, choosing directness over finesse. "A daughter. Her name is Anna. She's 8 years old, and I just found out she exists." The color drained from Ethan's face. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth and then lowered carefully like his hands couldn't quite trust themselves. "What?" So Jonathan told him about the cemetery, the crying man, the letter, the investigation. He told him about Noah Reed and the loft in Williamsburg and the life Lily had built that none of them knew about. He told him about Anna, those eyes, that smile, the way she'd called him Grandpa like it was the simplest thing in the world. Ethan listened without interrupting, but Jonathan could see emotions cycling across his son's face. Shock, anger, grief, something else that might have been betrayal. When Jonathan finished, Ethan sat back in his chair and stared at him for a long time. "You're telling me," Ethan said slowly, "that Lily had a whole secret life, got married, had a baby, and didn't tell any of us because she was afraid of how we'd react?" "Afraid of how I'd react," Jonathan corrected quietly. "The letter was addressed to me." "Jesus, Dad," Ethan's voice cracked. "What did we do to her? What kind of family were we that she couldn't even—" He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. "I should have called her more. After the divorce. After everything. I was so focused on getting away from all of it that I didn't notice she was trying to get away too." "We both failed her," Jonathan said. and the admission hurt like swallowing glass. But she left something behind, someone behind. And I don't know what I'm trying to do. Be better, maybe. Be there for Anna in all the ways I wasn't there for Lily. Does Mom know? Ethan asked. Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Ethan laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. Of course you did. Always strategic, even in grief. But then he softened, just slightly. Where is she? Anna? Brooklyn. Sunset Park. She lives with her uncle, Noah's brother-in-law. His name is Mateo. He's been her guardian since Noah died 3 years ago. And they're just okay with you suddenly showing up? They're cautious, Jonathan admitted. Mateo's protective. He doesn't trust me, and he has good reason not to. But Anna... His voice caught. Anna sees me as family. She calls me Grandpa. She asks me to come back, and I'm trying to earn that, to be worthy of it. Ethan was quiet for a long time, staring into his coffee like it might have answers. Finally, he looked up. I want to meet her, he said. Not today. Not tomorrow. But soon. She's my niece. She's the only piece of Lily we have left. And his voice broke completely. I need to know her. 2 weeks later, they arranged a meeting at the Brooklyn Museum on a Saturday afternoon. Neutral ground, public space, low pressure. Jonathan had suggested it after Anna mentioned she'd never been to a museum before, a fact that had lodged in his chest like an accusation. They met in the lobby, Mateo and Anna on one side, Jonathan and Ethan on the other, like two diplomatic parties unsure of protocol. Anna stared at Ethan with open curiosity. Are you my uncle? She asked directly, no preamble. Yeah, Ethan said, and Jonathan heard his voice crack slightly. I'm your Uncle Ethan. I was your mom's brother. Did you know her when she was little? Anna asked, taking Ethan's hand with the easy trust of a child who'd been taught that family was safe. What was she like? They walked through the museum slowly, Anna between them, firing questions at Ethan, who answered with a raw honesty that surprised Jonathan. He told her about Lily's obsession with drawing on every surface, about how she'd once painted a mural on her bedroom ceiling and their mother had been furious but secretly impressed. He told her about Lily's terrible singing voice and her excellent taste in music, about how she'd defended him from bullies in middle school even though she was 2 years younger and half his size. She was brave, Ethan said, and they'd stopped in front of a painting, abstract, full of movement and color. Really brave. She did things her own way, even when people told her she shouldn't. Like having me, Anna said matter-of-factly, and both men froze. Who told you that? Mateo asked carefully. Nobody had to tell me, Anna said, studying the painting with an artist's concentration. I know Grandpa Jonathan didn't know about me until I was already big. That means Mama Lily didn't tell him, which means she was scared, probably. But she had me anyway, and that's brave, right? Right, Ethan said softly. That's really brave. They spent 3 hours in the museum. By the end, Anna was holding Ethan's hand on one side and Jonathan's on the other, chattering about the paintings she liked best, the sculptures she thought were weird, the way light came through the skylights like it was trying to paint them all gold. When they said goodbye on the museum steps, Ethan hugged his father for the first time in 4 years. Don't screw this up, he whispered in Jonathan's ear. Don't be the same man who lost Lily. Please. I'm trying, Jonathan whispered back. I'm really trying. The phone call came at 2 a.m. on a Thursday in April, jarring Jonathan from shallow sleep. "Mr. Pierce?" Mateo's voice was strained, formal. "I'm sorry to call so late. The building's boiler failed. It's freezing. And Anna, she has a cold, and I can't get the landlord to. I know this isn't your problem, but I didn't know who else." "I'm coming," Jonathan said, already pulling on clothes. "Give me 30 minutes. He made it in 22, arriving at the Sunset Park apartment with the driver and a space heater borrowed from his building's maintenance office. Mateo opened the door looking exhausted, wrapped in multiple layers, Anna visible behind him, bundled in blankets on the couch like a small, miserable burrito. "Grandpa Jonathan," she said, her voice congested and small. "It's so cold." Jonathan's first instinct was to call his building manager, have them move to a hotel, solve the problem with money and speed. But he caught Mateo's expression, grateful but wary, and pivoted. "Let's get this heater set up," he said instead, "and I'll make some tea. Where's your circuit breaker? We need to make sure we don't overload anything." They worked together in the cold apartment, Jonathan following Mateo's lead, asking questions instead of issuing directives. By 3 a.m., the space heater was running safely. Anna was warmer, and they'd made a nest of blankets in the living room where she could sleep close to the heat source. "You should stay," Mateo said quietly, surprising them both. "The guest room, well, Anna's room, you could take the bed. I'll sleep out here with her." "I can take the couch," Jonathan offered. "You're 6'2" and 60, Mateo said with tired humor. "You'll destroy your back. Just take the bed." So Jonathan spent the night in his granddaughter's small room, surrounded by her drawings taped to the walls, her books stacked haphazardly on a shelf, her whole small life documented in the artifacts of childhood. He didn't sleep. He stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling and thought about Lily's room in their Connecticut house, how he'd barely seen it after she turned 12. How he'd missed the transformation from child's space to teenager's territory. In the morning he made pancakes, badly, burning the first 3. But Anna ate them anyway, drowning them in syrup and pronouncing them pretty good for a grandpa. The landlord finally called back around 9 a.m. Mateo handled the conversation tersely, in Spanish, his frustration evident even to Jonathan's limited understanding of the language. When he hung up, his jaw was tight. "They're sending someone this afternoon," Mateo said. "Maybe." "This happens often?" Jonathan asked carefully. "Often enough. Look, Mr. Pierce, Jonathan, I appreciate you coming last night, but I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you could find us a better place, a warmer place, that you could solve this with your checkbook." He held up a hand before Jonathan could protest. "And you could. But that's not what Anna needs. She needs stability. She needs to know that her life isn't going to change every time someone decides to help." "What if I helped anonymously?" Jonathan said. "What if—" "No," Mateo said firmly. "Because Anna's not stupid. She'd figure it out, and then she'd learn that love comes with strings attached, that acceptance means someone else controlling things." His voice softened. "I know you mean well, but we're not a project. We're family, and family means respecting boundaries even when they're uncomfortable." The words landed hard. Jonathan stood in the small kitchen, holding a spatula, and realized he was still trying to fix things the only way he knew how, by throwing resources at problems until they disappeared. "You're right," he said finally. "I'm sorry. Tell me what you actually need. Not what I think you need. What you need." Mateo studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Anna needs art supplies for her school project. Good ones, but not crazy expensive ones. She needs winter boots because hers are too small and I've been putting it off. And she needs—" He hesitated. She needs her grandfather to show up and push her on the swings and read her stories and remember her birthday without making it about how much money he spent. That's what she needs. I can do that, Jonathan said. I want to do that. Okay, Mateo said. Okay. 3 days later, Jonathan showed up with art supplies. A nice set, but from the local art store, not imported from Italy, and boots in Anna's size, purple with stars because Mateo had mentioned she loved purple. Anna hugged him so hard he had to brace himself against the doorframe. "Thank you, Grandpa," she said, already pulling on the boots to test them. "Can we go to the park? I want to see if I can run faster in these." They went to the park. Anna ran. Jonathan timed her on his phone's stopwatch, and when she demanded he race her, he did. Slowly, letting her win, but not so obviously that she'd notice. Mateo watched from a bench, and when Jonathan caught his eye, the younger man smiled. Not a big smile, just a small acknowledgement that maybe, finally, Jonathan was learning to do this right. The article appeared in the New York Post on a Tuesday morning in May, accompanied by a grainy photo of Jonathan pushing Anna on a swing in Prospect Park. Pierce's secret granddaughter. Billionaire's hidden family revealed. Jonathan saw it while having coffee at his desk, and his blood went cold. The article was speculative, but accurate enough to be dangerous. References to Lily's death. Questions about why the existence of an heir had been kept quiet. Implications about financial motives and inheritance disputes. Worst of all, they'd identified Anna's school. He called Mateo immediately. "I saw it," Mateo said, his voice flat. "Anna's principal called me an hour ago. There were photographers at school pickup yesterday. She's terrified." "I'm handling it," Jonathan said, already pulling up his lawyer's number on his other phone. "I'll get a restraining order. You can't restraining order the entire press corps," Mateo interrupted. "This is exactly what Lily was afraid of, that your world would swallow her whole, that she'd become a headline instead of a person." "Anna is a person," Jonathan said fiercely. "She's my granddaughter, and I will protect her from what? From being connected to you?" Mateo's voice was sharp now. "Maybe Anna would be safer if we'd never met you. Maybe Lily was right to keep her distance." The words were meant to wound, and they did. Jonathan sat in his office 57 floors above Manhattan and felt everything he'd built over the past 2 months crumble. "Do you want me to leave?" he asked quietly. "Do you want me to walk away?" There was a long silence. Jonathan could hear traffic sounds through Mateo's phone, the ambient noise of a life being lived at street level instead of in penthouse towers. "No," Mateo said finally, sounding exhausted. "No, I don't want that. Anna doesn't want that. But I need you to understand, we can't do this halfway. Either you're all in, really all in, not just when it's convenient or photogenic, or you're out, because Anna's already lost too many people, and I won't let her lose anyone else." "I'm all in," Jonathan said. "Whatever it takes." "Then fix this," Mateo said. "Not with money, not with lawyers. Actually, fix it." Jonathan called his publicist, his lawyer, and his ex-wife in that order. Lauren arrived at his office within an hour, her usual composed elegance slightly ruffled by urgency. "Why didn't you tell me?" were her first words, not hello or how are you, but an accusation wrapped in hurt. "I was going to," Jonathan said. "I wanted to make sure it was real first, that Mateo and Anna were comfortable with me?" Lauren's voice cracked. "Lily was my daughter too, Jonathan. I had a right to know she had a child. I have a right to know my granddaughter." "You're right," Jonathan said simply, "because she was. I'm sorry, I've been figuring this out as I go. Badly." Lauren sat down hard in one of his office chairs and pressed her hands to her face. When she looked up, Her eyes were wet. "Is she like Lily?" she asked quietly. "Does she have Lily's smile?" "Yes," Jonathan whispered. "God, yes. She's exactly like her." They spent the next hour discussing damage control. The publicist drafted a statement, brief, honest, asking for privacy while acknowledging the truth. Jonathan would give one interview, carefully selected, to a sympathetic journalist who wouldn't sensationalize or pry. Most importantly, they would emphasize that Anna was a child who deserved protection, not a story to be exploited. But the real fix came 3 days later, when Jonathan did something he'd never done in his professional life. He admitted he'd been wrong. The press conference was small, held at his company's headquarters with just a handful of carefully vetted journalists. Jonathan sat at a plain table with no branding, no corporate backdrop, just him and a microphone. 10 years ago, I lost my daughter Lily, he began, reading from no prepared statement, just speaking. I thought that was the worst thing that could happen to a father, but I recently learned something that might be worse. I'd lost her long before she died. Lost her because I was too focused on building an empire to notice I was destroying my family in the process. He told them about the cemetery, about finding Mateo and Anna, about discovering that Lily had created a whole life he knew nothing about because she'd been afraid of his judgment. He didn't mention Noah's name or give details about Anna's current living situation. He kept it focused on himself, his failures, his regrets, his determination to do better. My granddaughter is 8 years old, he said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. She's brilliant and funny and brave. She deserves to grow up without cameras following her to school, without strangers speculating about her life. I'm asking you, all of you, to give her that privacy. Not for me, for her, because she's already lost too much, and she shouldn't lose her childhood too. The video went viral, not because it was scandalous, but because it was human. Comments poured in, sympathy, criticism, shared stories from other people who'd learned too late what mattered. The tabloid attention didn't disappear entirely, but it shifted, became gentler, more respectful. That Saturday, when Jonathan arrived at the Sunset Park apartment for his scheduled visit, Mateo opened the door with something that might have been grudging respect. "You handled that well," he said. "Thank you." "I should have handled it better from the start," Jonathan said. "I should have thought about what Anna needs, not what I wanted." Anna appeared behind Mateo, bouncing with her usual energy, seemingly unbothered by the media storm that had surrounded them. "Grandpa," she called, "Mateo said you told the whole world I'm your granddaughter. Does that mean we're official now?" "Yeah, sweetheart," Jonathan said, kneeling to hug her. "We're official." "Good," Anna said seriously. "Because I drew you a picture, and I wasn't sure if I should give it to you if we weren't official yet." She pulled out a crayon drawing, 3 figures holding hands beneath a tree with a bright yellow sun overhead. The tallest figure wore a tie. The middle one had dark hair. The smallest had pigtails and a huge smile. "That's us," Anna explained, pointing. "Me and you and Mateo. At the park. It's called My Family." Jonathan looked at the drawing, at the word family, written in Anna's careful 8-year-old handwriting across the top, and felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. "It's perfect," he managed. "Thank you." Later, after they'd gone to the park and gotten ice cream and Anna had beaten him at a complicated game involving collecting leaves, Jonathan and Mateo sat on a bench while Anna played nearby. "I talked to Lauren, my ex-wife," Jonathan said, "Anna's grandmother. She'd like to meet her, if that's okay with you, if it's okay with Anna." Mateo was quiet for a moment, watching Anna balance on a low wall, arms spread for balance. Lily wrote about her mother too, he said finally. In some of Noah's old journals. She said your ex was the one she missed most after the divorce, that Lauren had tried to stay close, but you'd made it impossible. He glanced at Jonathan. Maybe it's time to fix that too. Yeah, Jonathan said. Maybe it is. They held the gathering on Anna's 9th birthday, which fell on a cold, bright December Saturday. Not at Jonathan's penthouse, too formal, too imposing, and not at the Sunset Park apartment, too small for the growing family. Instead, they rented a community room at the Brooklyn Public Library, Anna's favorite place, where she could be surrounded by books while her strange, newly assembled family tried to figure out how to be together. Lauren arrived first, nervous in a way Jonathan had rarely seen her. She brought a wrapped present, nothing ostentatious, just a sketchbook and a set of watercolors, and stood uncertainly by the door until Anna spotted her. "Are you Grandma Lauren?" Anna asked with her usual directness, studying the older woman with frank curiosity. "Yes," Lauren said, her voice unsteady. "If you'd like me to be." "Mateo says you knew Mama Lily when she was my age," Anna said. "Can you tell me about her? What games did she like?" Just like that, the ice broke. Lauren knelt to Anna's level and began talking about Lily's obsession with fairy houses, about how she'd created an entire village of twig structures in their Connecticut backyard, about the time she'd convinced the neighbor kids they could communicate with fairies if they left specific offerings. She told them they had to leave shiny pennies and kind thoughts written on tiny scrolls, Lauren said, laughing through tears. She collected dozens of pennies and little notes from the kids. She kept them in a shoebox under her bed for years. "I keep my special things under my bed too," Anna exclaimed, instantly connecting across the decades to the mother she'd never known. Ethan arrived next with his girlfriend Sarah, who worked in documentary filmmaking and had insisted on coming despite Ethan's warnings about family complexity. Within minutes, she and Anna were deep in conversation about visual storytelling, Sarah showing Anna pictures from her latest project, Anna showing Sarah her newest drawings. The party was simple. Pizza from Anna's favorite local place, a cake that Anna had helped Mateo bake, slightly lopsided but decorated with enthusiasm. Games that ranged from charades to a fierce competition of Pictionary that revealed unexpected artistic talent in Ethan and absolutely none in Jonathan. But the real moment came as afternoon faded into evening. Someone, Jonathan never figured out who, had brought a small Bluetooth speaker. Anna scrolled through music on Mateo's phone until she found a song that made her gasp. "Mateo, it's the song, the one Papa Noah used to play." It was acoustic guitar, gentle and warm, the kind of song that felt like summer evenings and safe places. Anna grabbed Lauren's hand, then Jonathan's, then started pulling everyone into a rough circle. "Papa Noah said Mama Lily loved to dance," Anna announced. "So we have to dance. It's her birthday too, kind of, because she made me, so we're celebrating both of us." They danced, awkwardly, laughingly, in a library community room in Brooklyn, while December darkness gathered outside. Lauren cried quietly. Sarah filmed a few seconds on her phone before Ethan made her put it away, and Mateo stood at the edge, holding Anna's coat and smiling at the chaos. Anna danced in the middle of them all, spinning in her purple dress, a gift from Lauren, carefully chosen, her face bright, with the uncomplicated joy of a child who'd claimed this strange assembly of wounded, trying adults as her own. When the song ended, they collapsed into chairs, breathless and grinning. Anna climbed into Jonathan's lap without asking, settling against his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Grandpa," she said quietly, just for him, "can I tell you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "I used to be sad that Mama Lily wasn't here for my birthdays," Anna said, her voice small and serious. "But Mateo said that maybe she sent you instead. like a present she left for later. Is that silly? Jonathan's throat closed completely. He wrapped his arms around his granddaughter and pressed his face against her hair. That's not silly at all, he managed. That's the least silly thing I've ever heard. Later, after cake and presents and too much sugar, Jonathan found himself alone with Mateo in the library's small kitchen area, washing plastic plates. "Thank you," Jonathan said, "for letting them come, for letting me, for letting all of this happen." "You don't need my permission to love your own family," Mateo said, but his voice was warm. "You've earned your place here. Anna trusts you." "That's not nothing. It's everything," Jonathan said quietly. "Yeah," Mateo agreed. "It really is." As they were packing up to leave, Anna ran over with something clutched in her hands, a piece of paper folded carefully into quarters. "This is for you," she told Jonathan. "But you can't open it until you get home. Promise." "I promise," Jonathan said, tucking the paper carefully into his coat pocket. In the car on the way back to Manhattan, he opened it. It was a crayon drawing, but more detailed than her usual work, clearly something she'd labored over. It showed a cemetery with a tree and a headstone. Standing in front of the headstone were 5 figures: a tall man with silvered hair, a woman in a blue dress, a younger man, another woman, and a small girl holding their hands. Beneath the drawing, in Anna's careful handwriting, "My family at Mama Lily's tree. We all love her. She would be happy we found each other. Love. Anna." Jonathan read it 3 times, then carefully folded it and placed it in his wallet, where he would carry it every day for the rest of his life. March 2nd arrived with the soft promise of early spring, that tentative warmth that New York wears like a hope rather than a guarantee. For the first time in 11 years, Jonathan didn't drive to Evergreen Cemetery alone. Mateo's car pulled up to the cemetery gates at 9 a.m., a dented Toyota with a car seat in back and a bumper sticker that read, "Artists see differently." Anna tumbled out wearing her purple boots and a jacket covered in paint stains, carrying a bundle of white lilies they'd picked up at a bodega on the way. "I helped choose them," she announced proudly. "The lady said these were the freshest ones, and I smelled all of them to make sure." Ethan's car arrived next, then Lauren's. They gathered in the parking lot like a strange war party, preparing for an emotional battle, this assembled family that existed because a young woman had loved in secret and left behind a piece of herself for them to discover too late. "Ready?" Jonathan asked, though he was asking himself as much as anyone. They walked up the familiar path. Jonathan and Anna first, her small hand in his. Then Mateo and Lauren, forming a tentative alliance. Ethan bringing up the rear with Sarah, who'd asked to come and been gently, firmly told this one was just for family. The oak tree was beginning to bud, tiny green promises dotting its branches. The headstone looked the same as it always had. Simple, elegant. The dates that never stopped hurting: Lily Marie Pierce, 1990 to 2014, artist, daughter, beloved. Anna walked straight up to it and placed her lilies carefully at the base, arranging them with the same concentration she'd shown that first morning when Jonathan discovered her building stone monuments to a mother she'd never known. "Hi, Mama Lily," Anna said, her voice clear and unself-conscious. "It's me, Anna, your daughter. I brought everyone to meet you properly this time." Jonathan felt his knees go weak. Lauren made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh, or both. Ethan moved closer, his hand finding his mother's. Anna continued, unbothered by the adult emotions swirling around her. "This is Grandpa Jonathan. You already know him, obviously. He's pretty good at being a grandpa now. He still tries to buy me too much stuff. But Mateo says that's normal for grandpas, so it's okay. And this is Grandma Lauren. She told me about the fairy houses, and she cries a lot, but in a good way. And this is Uncle Ethan. He's teaching me about investment portfolios, which sounds boring but is actually kind of cool. She paused, looking up at the adults clustered around her. Do you want to tell her things too? Lauren went first, kneeling beside Anna, her hand touching the cold stone like she could reach through it to the daughter she'd lost. I'm sorry, she whispered, for not fighting harder to stay close, for letting the divorce push us apart, for not being there when you were building this beautiful life with Noah and Anna. I'm sorry you felt like you had to hide your happiness from me. Ethan stepped forward next, his voice rough. You were the brave one, Lil. Always were. You did it your own way, and you were right too. I wish I'd told you that more. I wish I'd called. I wish... His voice broke. I wish you'd known Anna. God, she's so much like you, it hurts. Then Jonathan. He pulled out the letter, Lily's letter, worn soft from rereading, and held it like a talisman. Dear Lily, he began, and this was different from all the silent visits before, all those years of private grief and unspoken apologies. I read your letter, every word. You were right about me, about all of it. I did prioritize the wrong things. I did choose towers over family. I did let ambition destroy what mattered most. His voice steadied, strengthened. But you left me a gift, the greatest gift. You left me Anna, and through Anna I found my way back to being human instead of just successful. You left me a reason to learn how to be present, how to show up, how to value time over money and moments over monuments. He looked down at Anna, who was watching him with those devastating familiar eyes. You left me a second chance, and I promise you, I swear to you, I won't waste it. I'll be the grandfather to Anna that I should have been as a father to you. I'll choose her over every deal, every meeting, every reason I used to have for being absent. I'll be there. Anna slipped her hand into his, squeezing tight. Your turn, Mateo, she said. You knew Mama Lily, too. Mateo stepped forward, this young man who'd carried the weight of Jonathan's failures without complaint, who'd loved Lily through his connection to Noah, who'd raised Anna with patience and grace, and no resources except determination. Lily, Mateo said quietly, you gave Noah the happiest years of his life. He talked about you every day after you were gone. Not sad stories, happy ones. About painting murals together, about building Anna's nursery, about dreams of a house by a lake. You made him believe in beautiful things, and you made Anna, who is the best thing any of us will ever be connected to. So thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to choose love, even when it was scary. They stood in silence for a while. This strange family assembled around a grave, connected by loss and love and the stubborn insistence that maybe second chances were possible after all. Finally, Anna pulled out a rolled piece of paper from her backpack, another drawing, carefully colored and protected in a plastic sleeve. I made this for you, Mama Lily, she said, placing it gently against the headstone. It's all of us, your family, the one you made, even though you didn't know you were making it. See? Grandpa Jonathan and Grandma Lauren and Uncle Ethan and Mateo, and me in the middle, because I'm the reason everyone found each other. Ms. Rodriguez at school says that's called a legacy. She says a legacy is the good things you leave behind for other people to find. The drawing showed them all standing beneath the oak tree, holding hands in a chain that couldn't be broken. At the top, in Anna's careful letters, she'd written, Mama Lily's family. We're okay. You did good. Jonathan looked at his assembled family, broken pieces that had somehow found a way to fit together, and felt something he hadn't felt in decades. peace. "Should we make this official?" Ethan asked. "Coming here together every year?" "Anna's pace," Mateo said automatically, but he was smiling. "If she wants to." "I want to," Anna said firmly. "But next time can we bring a picnic?" "Mama Lily liked picnics," Mateo told me. "And can Grandma Lauren tell more stories about the fairy houses? And can Uncle Ethan teach me that card trick he did at my birthday?" "Yes," Jonathan said simply. "To all of it, yes." They stayed for another hour, talking and laughing and crying in turns, the cold seeping through their clothes but nobody suggesting they leave. The sun climbed higher, warming the air, and the oak tree's shadow shortened across the grave. When they finally walked back down the hill together, Anna in the middle again, holding Jonathan's hand on one side and Lauren's on the other, Jonathan paused to look back. The white lilies lay bright against the grey stone. Anna's drawing fluttered slightly in the breeze, protected by its plastic sleeve. The oak tree stretched its branches overhead like a blessing. Lily Pierce had been gone for 11 years, but her legacy, her daughter, her family, her love, was just beginning to bloom. "Come on, Grandpa," Anna called back to him, tugging his hand. "You promised we could get pancakes after, and you said you'd teach me how to make them not burn this time." "I'm coming," Jonathan said, and he meant it in more ways than one. He was coming back to life, back to family, back to being the man Lily had hoped he could be, even when she'd been too afraid to tell him so. They walked together toward the cemetery gates, toward breakfast and future Sundays, and all the small, ordinary miracles of showing up and staying present and choosing love over legacy. The oak tree watched them go, patient and ancient, keeping its vigil over the girl who dared to build a life on her own terms and left behind proof that some second chances are worth waiting for.